All right, let's take you now to President Trump. We've got a couple of announcements that let's hear if he talks about them, but a new AG and a new nominee to the UN ambassador job. Let's listen.
Jurist in the country, highly respected lawyer, former Attorney General under the Bush administration, a terrific man, a terrific person, a brilliant man. I did not know him until recently when I went through the process of looking at people. And he was my first choice from day one, respected by Republicans and respected by Democrats. He will be nominated for the United States Attorney General, and hopefully that process will go very quickly. And I think it will go very quickly, and I've seen very good things about him even over the last day or so when people thought that it might be Bill Barr. So Bill Barr will be nominated for the United States Attorney General position. I think he will serve with great distinction. I also want to inform you that Heather Nauert, somebody that we know very well, who's done a great job at as working with Mike Pompeo and others over at the State Department, Heather Nauert will be nominated. She's going to work with Nikki Haley to replace Nikki at the United Nations. She'll be ambassador to the United Nations. She's very talented, very smart, very quick, and I think she's going to be respected by all. So Heather Nauert will be nominated for the ambassador to the United Nations. Those are two very big ones. I have another one for tomorrow that I'm going to be announcing at the Army-Navy game. I can give you a little hint. It will have to do with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and succession. And I look forward to telling you, and I'll see you later. I'll see you in Kansas.
All right, there you hear from the President of the United States, those two announcements that we broke a little earlier here on this broadcast, the President nominating Mr. Barr as the next Attorney General. It's interesting because, as we said earlier, he was the Attorney General under Bush 41, President Bush 41st President of the United States. And he has actually advocated in his time as a lawyer for sweeping presidential power. So we'll have to see how this affects the Mueller investigation. Obviously, that's the question that many people are going to have, including the Senate. With regards to Heather Nauert, as we said earlier, she is now going to be the nominee for the UN ambassador job. Again, very thin resume when it comes to foreign policy experience. There's a headline here from the Washington Post, which I thought was interesting, that popped up. Heather Nauert cited D-Day as the height of U.S.-German relations. Now she's headed to the UN. So you can expect a sort of grilling from the Senate when she comes before them.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about it. You know, all that time spent on Fox News, there's going to be a lot of stuff on record for her, right? So a lot of stuff to ask her about at the State Department. I think, you know, she's done a pretty fine job, but this is a much different type of role where you're interacting with some of the people from other countries who have spent an entire lifetime in diplomacy.
Thinking about geopolitics
right?
and
Exactly.
Diplomacy, right.
So it should be interesting. You know, we mentioned before that the idea of moving that position out of out of the cabinet has been floated. And I don't know, Vlad, does that mean that she would have to go through a Senate confirmation or no if it's moved out of the cabinet?
It's a good point. I think they would have to rework that. I don't know.
Yeah,
we could probably
you know who might know?
But
Paula Reid might know.
And
we've got her standing by now. Paula, can you hear us?
Okay. Yes. Hello.
Okay. Hey, Paula.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. No, I know you're always looking at your emails.
There's quite a bit of breaking news right now.
So why don't you break it here with us?
In the newsroom. Okay. So the president has announced his intention to nominate William Barr as his new attorney general to replace Jeff Sessions, who was forced to resign from that position. Now, CBS News reported yesterday that Barr had made the shortlist. He was one of about 3 contenders. Also a representative from Texas, and even acting Attorney General Whitaker was considered to be in the running, but it would be difficult to make him the permanent attorney general because it would have involved removing him from his acting role to go through the nominating process. So it was pretty clear that William Barr had emerged as the front runner. And today the president was speaking to reporters, and he confirmed that he does intend to nominate Barr to become his attorney general. Now, call me cynical, but this is a day when we're expecting a lot of news out of the special counsel investigation. We expect new developments in Manafort, Cohen, and potentially other people, and it does appear that perhaps this is part of an effort to distract from that.
Yeah, you know, you got to think about that, right? And in fact, I said to myself, probably something is going to drop today. I didn't know it was going to be this. What can you tell us about Barr? His background, you know, is he a Trump loyalist? Do we know anything about where he stands on this sort of stuff?
Well, he previously served as Attorney General in the Bush administration from 1991 to 1993. So he would be returning for a second tour of duty heading the Justice Department. And at this point, sources tell us that what the president was really looking for was someone who would be pretty easy to confirm. We weren't sure, especially when he put Whitaker in that acting Attorney General role, what kind of nominee we would get. Is the president looking for someone who would uphold the norms and the traditions of the Justice Department, or was he looking for a loyalist, someone like Whitaker, perhaps someone like Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi? But here we get someone who is arguably from central casting. Now, one thing that's really interesting about Barr's record, sort of as an academic, as a legal scholar, is he is someone who has always really supported what is called the unitary executive. He has always kind of endorsed the idea of a very powerful president, executive branch. So that may be something that appealed to President Trump, but politically, realistically, the president needed someone like Barr who could get through the confirmation hearing.
It's interesting, Paula. I mean, looking up at some of the things that Mr. Barr has said with regards to the Russia investigation, with regards to the Mueller investigation, with regards to President Trump's use of the term lock her up at his rallies, suggesting Hillary Clinton should be locked up. And this is, I'm quoting the New York Times here, quoting Mr. Barr. This is after Attorney General Sessions recused himself. He said this: "There's nothing inherently wrong about a president calling for an investigation, although an investigation shouldn't be launched just because a president wants it. The ultimate question is whether the matter warrants investigation." Mr. Barr said he sees more basis for investigating the uranium deal than any supposed collusion between Mr. Trump and Russia. To the extent it is not pursuing these matters, the department is abdicating its responsibility. So you're already seeing a little bit of why maybe
people
President
what
Trump.
Uranium deal he's talking about. He's talking about the Hillary Clinton deal that had been looked into already and debunked, essentially, right?
Yes. And currently there are several investigations that the president and his supporters have called for connected to the Clintons. And at this point, there is a U.S. attorney out in Utah who is evaluating whether or not any of those should be pursued. But he's had those for nearly a year, and there's been no word of a second special counsel being appointed. These comments will no doubt have come up in a confirmation hearing, but ultimately this is someone with a lot of Justice Department experience, and he will oversee the special counsel investigation. It doesn't appear that he's made any comments calling for it to be dissolved, even if he's not a fan of the investigation. We have to remember, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, he was a witness in the investigation, a pretty important witness, and he was still able to oversee the special counsel. So I think the bar is pretty high for people having to recuse themselves. But no doubt, one of the biggest themes in his confirmation hearing will be the comments that he's made about special counsel and whether or not the folks who need to confirm him believe that he can be an objective caretaker and overseer of that investigation.
So then, Paula, with these sort of moving parts here, who ultimately, when this whole thing sort of shakes out, will be responsible, do you think, for the Russia investigation? Because we've got, acting attorney general. It's who's going to be in charge?
Custody disputes are always messy and complicated, but none so much as that of the Russia investigation. At this point, I don't see any reason why Mr. Barr would not be able to oversee the Russia investigation. Whitaker will continue to oversee the probe until Mr. Barr is confirmed, and then it would go to Mr. Barr. At this point, I do not see any reason for him to recuse. We just found out that he will be the nominee. No one's had a chance to even ask him if he has any plans to step aside. But given how unhappy the president was with his previous attorney general for stepping aside, it would serve to reason that Mr. Barr does not plan to recuse himself in this case.
Although, we talked about some of the comments that he has made with regards to the Russia investigation and the Uranium One deal. Let's also point this out, that in a speech in 1992, so it's some years back, but it does give you a sense of how he perceives the role of the attorney general. He said he put forth the idea that the attorney general's primary loyalty is to the rule of law, not to the president who appointed him. This is in a speech that he gave. He then said that he must provide unvarnished, straight from the shoulder, legal advice with no regard to political considerations, like what conclusions the White House might prefer. The unique position of the attorney general raises special considerations. The oath is to uphold the Constitution. So, Paula, this is one of the things why President Trump, in those comments that he made just now at the White House, said that there are a lot of Republicans, certainly, who are fans of Mr. Barr, but also some Democrats.
Absolutely, and that's really what he needs. He needs someone who can be confirmed without a sort of explosive or really contentious confirmation hearing. I think the president is set with contentious confirmation hearings for quite some time. The president just needs, again, someone from central casting. They were waiting to see how many votes they got in the Senate, or excuse me, how many Republicans they were able to get in the Senate before deciding whether or not they could really afford the political fight for someone who was more of a loyalist, or if they needed someone who had more experience, more of someone from central casting like Mr. Barr. And clearly, or as we reported yesterday, he was looking at people more from central casting, people who have experience in the Justice Department and will command the respect not only of the people who need to confirm him or her, but also the people who will work for him, the rank and file. There are concerns among the rank and file Justice Department employees. Remember, the Justice Department includes the FBI, the DEA, the ATF. There are concerns about who the person at the top is working for. Are they working for the American people, or are they working for the president?
All right, Paula Reid with the breaking news. Thank you, Paula, so much. As always, we appreciate it.